Hi, my name is Khalil Cumberbatch, and I'm the Associate Vice President of Policy at the David Rothenberg Center for Public Policy at the Fortune Society, and welcome to Both Sides of the Bars, a discussion-driven show that examines the criminal justice system from various perspectives, including those most impacted by the criminal justice system. We discuss critical questions about how the current system works, its intersections with social justice, and highlight the efforts that are being made to improve the lives of everyone that is affected by it. We ask you, the viewers, to spread the word about both sides of the bars and share your comments with us on Twitter at TheFortuneSOC. Today's show is titled Community Engagement: Why Building Communities is Vital to Criminal Justice Reform. According to the National Reentry Resource Center, approximately 9 million people will be released annually from jails across the country. Once released, they face systemic and individual barriers that impede their ability to obtain a successful reentry and acclimation. Many advocates across the country are pushing for an investment into communities through a myriad of initiatives and campaigns that address the lack of resources needed to survive post-incarceration. My guest today is William Evans, founder and president of Neighborhood Benches, a non-for-profit organization designed to help young adults and leaders achieve positive changes in communities where capacity building, community service, and restorative justice practices are needed. Will, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So tell our viewers about Neighborhood Benches. One, why the name?
Yeah.
Two, why now? And three, out of all of the places, out of all of the touch points in the criminal justice system, why invest your energy and resources into the community touch point?
So first, let me speak a little to why the name. I feel as though Neighborhood Benches is something that we can all identify with. Not only is it something that we can all identify with, but starting a discussion with individuals from the community that's impacted, like the ones that we come from, they can identify what it is to sit on a bench and have a gathering and talk about life. For some young individuals, it's about the streets, it's about the street life, the gang life, and that's their meeting point. But with those same individuals, you have them also knowing what it is to be part of a bench or be in front of a judge that's also sitting on a bench. So we try to draw the line in between the two, the benches in the courthouses and the benches in the community, and how both sides can play an integral part as far as changing around the community itself. And most of the work that we do is focused on impacted individuals, on how they can model change for the young adults in the community and show them that it's a different lifestyle now that they need to be focused on.
And when you say impacted individuals, you mean folks who have had experience or involvement in the criminal justice system?
Yes, who've been impacted two different ways, whether it's violence or whether it's the criminal justice system. In our belief and our understanding is that they work in a cycle, you know. So we try to make sure we stay on point with having that discussion with our young folks.
And so, one, how does your organization define young? Because that's a definition that means different things to different people.
Definitely.
And you know, why work with youth? You know, everyone wants to work with youth, but if you sit down with a bunch of teenagers for 10 minutes, you'll see that it is not quite the easy task. And so, you know, why youth? You know, why communities, right? Like, why, out of all of the points you could insert your energy into, that you chose to do it there?
So for one thing that we notice is that young people have a problem with really paying attention, right? Especially when they feel as though what it is that you're talking about is not something that they can relate to. However, when you're talking about mass incarceration, the criminal justice system, that's something that they're all in tune with, because this is something that's impacting them every day, whether it's themselves, whether it's their mothers, their fathers, their sisters, their brothers, their cousins. So when we define youth, we're looking at the young individuals from 13 years old, where it's just 2 years right before they can actually get caught up in the criminal justice system, all the way up to 24. And we do that specifically because we know that that's an age group where not only there's a gap when it comes down to the intersections between violence and incarceration, but that's also the individuals that's at risk. And when I say at risk, those are the individuals that's living in communities where it's still police brutality, where it's still gang violence, and where they're still trying to find themselves. So we try to make sure we focus on that population and utilize some of the older folks like ourselves to teach them what it is to be role models, not only based on our experiences, but from other things that we're educated on, and we can help them better understand what it is to stay away from these different type of turmoils.
And so how did you get to the point where you said, I'm going to found an organization, I'm going to start something of my own? Like, what was some of that journey?
Well, that for me, growing up in the Andrew Jackson houses in the South Bronx, I was shot in the neck at the age of 16. I caught my first arrest at the age of 15, coming from the supermarket from making a delivery, coming out of a building that was infested with drugs, and I was arrested. Although I was released, that always stuck with me. The fact that this same building was where I got shot at and almost lost my life also stuck with me. So as the years went by and I started learning different things from trauma-informed care to everything that's associated with counseling, it helped me understand a little more about myself. But then like working on Rikers Island, also with the Fortune Society, being a counselor, some of these things not only resonated with my mission, but also resonated with me to the point where I said I have to do more. So like me, I'm a strong believer in all of the restorative practices, and I said in order for me to make this work, I have to go back to where it all started. So our first pilot wasn't Andrew Jackson houses. And as you may know, while the crime rate was going down in the city, it rose in public housing. So that was the point for me where I said where I have to actually go back to this community where I was born and raised, and try to do something about it. And if it worked there, I know it can work anywhere else.
Yeah. And so how has it been, as someone who is directly impacted by, as you said, violence and the criminal justice system, how do you use that experience at all to guide the principles of an organization that is now responsible for serving people who were just like you and me?
Yeah. It's always a battle, right? Because you want people to believe in a system, but at the same time, you want them to believe in it enough to know that they can make changes to it, right? Because most of the time, when we have young people that do not believe in the system, they're not going to pay attention to how the system is impacting us. So what we do is we take them on a journey, right? And I not only share with them my experiences, but I share with them my colleague experiences. I share with them the experiences of other community members. And I invite them into the space at the appropriate time so they can also share their experiences. And like for most young guys, they always say, yeah, been there, done that, something scared you from doing it. So I share with them how I was detained for 11 months and 4 days on Rikers Island, but then I was acquitted. So I let them know I never been sentenced to any time, but that don't stop me from having some type of space in this conversation, where I still had a mother that experienced it, a brother that's doing part of his 20 years, and other relatives and friends that's also going through the system itself. And for most young folks, that opened up, that opens their eyes, to the larger issue, why this is happening.
Yeah. And so when you look at like communities across the country, particularly in communities of color, you see some troubling trends as it relates to young people, but particularly young people of color. Excessive levels of violence,
Yes.
excessive levels of peer pressure in a way that is not just about cutting school, but sometimes it involves initiations into entities that are labeled as gangs. How is Neighborhood Benches' approach helping to address some of that? And and if you could at some point have a replication of Neighborhood Benches, what would that look like, if at all?
Oh, it's a good thing that you even asked me that question, because we got a call from some organizations in a school out in North Carolina and some organizations out in upstate. I can't think of the name right now. But it was upstate, and that
Upstate
was
New York?
Yeah, upstate New York, and that was just based on them just looking at the website. So what we did with the website was we revised the website so it can actually talk about these points and create a roadmap for you to follow if this is something that you want to do. So to answer your question, is that most of the time we make sure individuals understand that we need to start pushing youth into this space, right? And when I say this space, that's the space where we're having conferences about youth, where we're actually having all these different discussions about youth, but yet they're not in that same space. Yeah. So like for us, like we let them know if a gang to you is about having a large group, so you need to move with us because we're moving in a large group with 75 young people. Especially over the summer where we having 150 young people plus. And we try to divide them up, probably break them into fours, and push into these spaces where it's discussions happening, right? And one of the things that we try to help people understand is that when you have these young people and they're only in junior high school, they may never be a part of the discussion if that opportunity do not happen now. So we take them into these spaces where it's experts speaking about their experiences, some of the things that they've learned, and not only can they take from that conversation, but they can also try to formulate a style of their own to try to help someone else in their community. And most of the young people, they can identify with some of the things that's taking place in that same conversation. Not all the time do they have the terminology for it, but they can identify certain things that they can say, you know what, I can relate to that because I just had a father that just went through that, and what can I do for myself to prevent me from going through that same, from experiencing the same things.
Yeah. And so, Neighborhood Benches serves youth, right? I think that when most people think of the criminal justice system and they think of youth, they think of two things I would largely say is one is that, they think of black or brown youth, and they generally think about black or brown boys or young men. What is Neighborhood Benches doing to address the experiences that young girls and young women of color face? As you know, and maybe the viewers know that African American girls of a particular age range are the fastest growing subpopulation in the criminal justice system in prison.
True indeed.
And so, you let our viewers know about what Neighborhood Benches is doing to try to address their particular concerns that may be different than that of young boys.
Okay, so for one thing, Neighborhood Benches is a group of thought partners, right? This is male, females, various race, and what we do is we invite people into the space and try to work with them to not only understand what it is that we're doing, but help them understand what their calling could be, or what their calling is at the time. And most individuals that we work with already have an idea of what it is that they want to do. So prime example, I could speak about the sister Shaniqua Charles that's actually doing work in all boroughs, and she's a sister, and she's she's understanding what's going on and how we're being impacted. We're also working with a group that we're putting that we're actually supporting from scratch, which is titled We Owe. And this is some sisters that's actually taking on younger sisters to teach them about their responsibilities, not only to themselves but to their community. And We Owe is a fascinated group because not only are there not only is it that they're females, but they're coming from all over, you know, and the way you see sisters growing in this space is phenomenal, you know, and they can identify with so much. They know what it is to be incarcerated. They know what it is to be a parent and have a child that's soon to be incarcerated or that's at risk of violence, and they're stepping into this space strong. Yeah. So we're definitely out here supporting other groups with doing this work.
And so a youth goes through neighborhood benches or engages with neighborhood benches. What's the long-term goal for someone going through your program? Like, what's something that they can look to when they're on day one and day 60 or day 120?
Yeah. So they can definitely expect us to push them, right? We have this thing where we always tell them, we're not ourselves, but we also tell them that you have a dream. What is that dream? What is it that you want to do? What type of career you want to have? So we take them through the 3 stages, which is our we have a neighborhood level solution where we're working with NYCHA developments directly.
NYCHA's New York City Housing Authority, which is public housing.
Yes, public housing, and we're working with the tenant associations, right? And the tenant associations are individuals that's function that's organized as an organization. However, you don't have a lot of them now that's doing that nonprofit direct services work, but they have the power and the structure to do so. So we step into that space and we help them identify some of the things that they can be doing, how to identify funders, how to identify some of the at-risk youth in their communities, some of the directly impacted brothers and sisters, and how to pull them together and have them assist them with developing programs. So then you have the community level, where we're actually taking some of these young brothers and sisters and we're showing them how to basically police their community and bring down the youth incarceration rate and bring down the youth violence and how to become a part of a campaign that's meaningful to them and their families. Then you have the citywide level, which is our solution 3, where we will be launching in 2019, where we're actually taking on students from colleges. We're taking on students that we work with, Bronx Community Solutions, where we go in and we conduct some of their groups. So we're taking students from 4 different areas, which is courts, public housing, colleges, and summer youth. And we're mixing them in because they all have different type of experiences. And we look forward to them launching their own project by 2020, that's focused on some of the work that we're doing here.
Yeah. And so how do the youth, I remember one time, it was in the summer, maybe about 2 years ago, that you, true to fashion indeed, had, I would say, somewhere around 30 or 40 youth. And just on a whim, you were passing by I would say it was like it was a city-owned yard that had a bunch of just plants and stuff growing, and it obviously needed someone to just kind of do some green thumb work. And you just, the youth were like so energetic, they just cleaned up that entire park like in a day. So what, like, the activities that Neighborhood Benches does is obviously, some of it is community driven, right? Stuff like that. But then is there any work being done around helping to address some of the policies that are negatively impacting youth?
Yes, yes. So what we do with them, one of the reasons for us actually engaging in those type of activities is to show them that community service is not always bad, right? Community service is a way to give back to your community and help fix up spaces that you feel as though that needs to be fixing, and it makes the community feel good at the same time. But the young folks are also feeling good about it because this is something that they can engage with and they can do on their own over and over and over. And we introduced them to some of the grants from like Citizens Committee, Spark Plug, so they can understand that they can also request funding to do this work. And if the funding is not there, you could do it for free and still feel good about it. In the back end of that, throughout that time, we're introducing them to other organizations that's focusing on policies and campaigns that's impacting them. You know, and for us, we understand that that's just like school, you know, because schools are not teaching our young kids these things, you know, like they're introducing them to the space, right? But not to the space as into the people, right? So we're actually taking them out so they can network and so they can understand a little more and maybe pull somebody aside and ask them, what is it that you're doing? So we're making sure that we introduce them into these into these spaces where they can feel I would say better when time go by, and it won't be something new to them. You know, a lot of times we find that young people is not in the space to the point where they're not comfortable having a conversation with someone else. But you know, once you introduce them to it one time, they'll be able to carry on.
Yeah. And how many youth have went through neighborhood benches thus far, would you say?
Thus far, well, over the summer alone, we take no more than 140. Right, so throughout the year, we have worked with close to 1,000, maybe about like 900 young people, because in that same space we're still mixing in people that's up to 26, 27, and we do that intentionally because we don't want to just be the only ones providing this type of message.
And so, you know, we have viewers from all over the country. What would you say to someone who is, you know, listening to this right now and saying, you know, I could be Will, like I could be somebody who could start something, an initiative in a community that's working with youth. You know, what would you tell them based on all of your experiences now, right, as like a founder and president of a living organization? You know, what would you tell them about some of the experiences that you've had?
Well, the first thing I would tell them is that this have to be something that they're driven to do, right? And where they understand that it's a part of community service, right? It's a part of giving back, and it's something that they do not expect to be financially compensated for, right? This is something that they have to know that their heart is in. They feel and they feel real passionate about. That would be the first thing. The second thing I would want to point out to them is that you're going to be saving a lot of lives doing this work, right? And you know, if you need to understand what's going on in your community, you need to go out there and better understand the people, ask the people questions, ask them what they need. Because what I realized over time is that because I can identify with certain things, that do not make me the only expert in that space. It's other people that have answers and solutions that can sit down with you and help you critique what it is that you need to do for the community. In addition to that, I would say if you have a dream, go for it. You know, don't let anything stop you. You know, because you're not a failure until you actually stop trying. You know, and for those who want to look at the model and want to try to do some of the things that we're doing, they could look on the website, you know, and be able to identify between the solutions that they want to utilize in their community and reach out to us. Yeah.
And so I want to take the last couple of minutes that we have to talk about, you know, your vision for neighborhood benches.
Man,
I know as a founder and president, you probably get asked that all the time about, you what's your long-term strategy? What's your 5-year plan? But let's just, without putting a number on it, right?
Yeah.
Sometime in the not so distant future, when you look at neighborhood benches, what is it that you would want to see?
I would definitely want to see more brothers and sisters stepping up, taking on leadership roles, focusing more on policies. I would like the schools to take a part in what it is that we're doing at the middle school level. Making sure our young folks understand that outside of education is still education. I would want them to be able to push our young folks to actually address some of these issues that's impacting them and their families. For the long haul, what I look for neighborhood benches to accomplish is to have a program in all 346 public housing developments, and be able to have those same tenant associations and individuals from those communities taking part in this, taking part in being a leader, taking part in driving down violence, driving down incarceration, and be able to implement our program into colleges and other public school settings.
And so how can folks learn more about neighborhood benches in the last 30 seconds that we have?
They can actually go visit our webpage. They could go and see what we're doing every day on Instagram. We try to make sure we show as much as we can with everything we're doing.
Yeah. Thank you, Will. And thank you to the viewers for tuning in. If you're interested in finding out more about the Fortune Society or neighborhood benches, please check us out on the web. Fortune Society's website address is fortunesociety.org. We are also on Facebook. You can find us by just typing in the Fortune Society. This is Khalil Cumberbatch, and I appreciate you joining us as we critically look at both sides of the bars.